Okay, I thought I would have had everything done on the engine minus the carburetor, which isn't built yet by now, but no, that's not true. It's little pieces after little pieces. There's no end. So with the air conditioning, I got a new receiver dryer, got a new switch, and this is obviously the old one, and a new expansion valve. Got to put that in yet, obviously. My O-rings and stuff for it. My drive shaft, I'll put that in later. You know, like I say, it just seems like it never seems to end. Got a couple hoses there. There's my power steering hose, new one still in the box. Can I show you some of the air conditioning stuff? Here's where that little switch goes. I got to hook that up on the other end. One thing I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do for sure yet. You know, here's the heater hose. You know, this actually turns pretty good. It's a little bit stiff, but I hate to put it on and find out the hard way that I should have replaced it, because when that thing goes, you know, it's going to make a big mess. I've got this guy, brand new one. It's out of a pickup, but the problem is it sits a little bit low. Oops, there we go. Sits a little bit low, and the hoses are going to get close to that. If I can, once I get the AC in there so I know exactly where all that's going to sit, and I might be able to make it work. If I think I can make the hoses work, we're going to use it, because like I say, it's a brand new unit. It looks beautiful, and it's not going to leak. So we'll see. Yeah, it just seems like this never-ending little stream of little things, but I guess that's just the way life is. My personal project is the same way. It's one little thing after another, after another, after another. So, but otherwise, it's getting pretty close. Getting really close, actually. Well, would you look at that? Sitting on all four wheels for a change. Boy, it's been a while, hasn't it? Kind of felt like this day would never come. So obviously, I got enough put together where I can get it back on all four wheels. For the most part, the engine bay is done, minus electrical. That's kind of the next big task for under here. Pull the wiring harness out and get it all checked and put back together and stuff. Hopefully the carburetor will be done soon. And yep, I got this in there. It's in a little different position. You know, the original one was taller and it stuck out, so it would have been maybe here centered instead of right there. So it fits though. Everything seems to work okay. I'm sending out the carburetor, the fuel pump to carburetor line that, you know, goes from way down under there, snakes around back into here and pops out up over here. Gonna send that out and get that remade, because the original carburetor wasn't on here and the line had just been cut. And I really don't want to just put a, you know, 1.5 foot of rubber hose laying across the engine if we can avoid that. So I took one off of one of my parts cars to get a copy made. And there we go. Got the power steering line in. So looking pretty good. One thing I would suggest to anybody who is doing something similar, learn from my mistakes. These heater hoses, this one and the other one on the back side over there, hook those up at least this end of it, maybe, you know, the engine side end, before you put the power steering pump on, and or all this, with all this extra emissions crap. Boy, that was tough to get in there. So, you know, hopefully they should never go bad, you know, for what this car is going to get used for. But if they ever do, sucks to be that poor mechanic that's got to get in there and do that, because by then the fenders will be on and everything else, and you got to lean twice as far. Anyway, actually the very next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put the drive shaft in and a couple other under the car things, mostly because I've got the drive shaft laying right here and it's kind of in the way. And then I've got this line. It's some sort of vent line. I really don't know where it goes off the top of my head. I'll have to look at the pictures. So, another little fun challenge. So, but it's actually going to kind of sit dormant for a week or two. I've got to work on my own car. It's a nice day today. Not that you people in YouTube would know that it's going to sit for a week before the next chunk gets done, but for all you know, these videos are 10 years old. Anyway, and then I hit a deer with my Rampage a few weeks ago, so I got to get that in there and get a new headlight mounting panel in it, but that's none of your real concern. Anyway, so just a little look at that. progress. Okay, front end wiring harness, engine and everything. So it's actually in pretty good shape. I don't see too many problems. You know, this is the main harness. There's a couple things I need to rewrap. I don't really see much damage or bad connections anywhere. Just dirty. You know, and some of it looks bad. It's hard to tell there, but it's actually just goo from something else on there. It's actually in, I think, pretty good shape. I'll test everything before I put it in just to make sure. That's the transmission, neutral safety switch harness. That other one back over there is cruise control. And then that's the engine harness. That's it. That's all that actually goes on the engine itself. Coil looks a little oily. I think I'm going to replace that. It's probably, I think it's leaking a little bit. Not going to take the chance and fighting with a coil. It turns out to be bad anyway. Coils aren't that expensive. So, but that's it. That's so simple. It doesn't have lean burn anything, which is weird for a California emissions car, but you couldn't get lean burn apparently out there. They had to do other things. California emissions are just stupid. But anyway, so that's super simple. But don't worry, they made up for it with the vacuum hose routing. Yeah, look at that. Isn't that just complicated? This is my 77 emissions control factory service manual. So I got to get a, I'm going to confirm that that's the actual diagram from underneath the hood, but I'm pretty sure it is. It's the only one that says 364 barrel California, not high output, or high performance, excuse me. Anyway, so I think this will be pretty straightforward and simple. So the carburetor is back on, as you can see. It's not the original carburetor. That's long gone. This didn't have the original carburetor, and when I got it, this is as close as we're going to get without having a time machine to go back in time and get one. Anyway, I ended up putting studs in. I didn't have the original hardware. I lock-headed the studs into the intake and then cut them down so that the top of the stud was about where the nut is. It should never have to come off, so hopefully there's no problem with that. Couldn't get a new choke thermostat. This is a used one. I had to rebend a rod. Whoops, I wasn't showing you what I was looking at. I had to make a template for the rod. There we go, you can kind of see it. It's a piece of coat hanger, and that got really close to where it needs to be. I still need to get a clip for it. And then I was going to work on some of the emission stuff the other day, the 7 miles of vacuum line that this thing has. And I put as much of it back the way the pictures I had before. Then I start comparing it to the vacuum hose diagram, which is right there. And stuff just wasn't right. Nothing was, just wasn't quite right. Things going to the wrong place, pieces missing. And I just threw my hands up and said to hell with it. I'm going to do it some other day. So today's the day. If this thing wasn't California emissions, I would eliminate about 90% of this stuff. But anyway, for whatever reason, this is not a high performance engine. Sorry, but yet this is the sticker that came off of there, and this is listed for, here we go, high performance engine. But it's not. What it should have been, I'll flip over a couple pages, here we go, this is the diagram. It's almost exactly the same, with the exception of the other one has, rather than going from the distributor all the way over to the carburetor, there's a little valve inside on the side of the air cleaner lid, or air cleaner assembly. That's the only difference. And I'm thinking I might make this to do the vacuum, all that stuff, to this, not what was necessarily on there, and just find a different air cleaner assembly, which is easy to do. I got dozens of them out there. Oh, I shouldn't say dozens. I got enough out there. We shall see. I'm just going to go one line by one line at a time, and probably replace most of them, and kind of see where I get. I still have one thing. I have to get a idle screw for the carburetor, but that's minor. And the worst of it is, this all looks good. Get everything routed right, and that air cleaner, You barely see any of the engine by the time you get in with that and all the emission stuff that's on there. You know there's an engine under there somewhere. It's almost like new cars are now, only this isn't covered in plastic for the sake of covering it up. It's covered because there's stuff in the way. Anyway, enough of me bitching about the emissions crap on here. Okay, I have come up with one addendum to the engine assembly, which I didn't realize was a bad idea until now. There is, let's see if I can show you this. There you go. This little piece of steel line. I wasn't sure where it went because it was just kind of laying loose. I figured it out. This is supposed to go kind of underneath, behind the manifold there. There's an emissions, yet another piece of emissions right on the bottom of the exhaust manifold, little vacuum operated flapper valve. And this part of it is supposed to be, I don't know, you probably can't even see it under there, but kind of almost right next to the dipstick tube, which doesn't have a dipstick in yet, for the transmission anyway. And this is going to be kind of a pain in the butt to put in, and I'm not going to run vacuum line right next to the exhaust manifold because that won't last very long. But, so, for those of you keeping score at home, if you're doing something with the California emissions, make sure you put this thing in there before you put the engine in, because this is going to involve, I think, a little bit of swearing to get it in there. So, anyway. Well, I finally got there. I got all the vacuum lines hooked up the way they're supposed to be. The air cleaner's on there. It's not the one I'm going to use, I don't think. It needs to be cleaned up anyway. But as you can see, can't really see any of the vacuum lines. Hardly any of them. Let me take this out of the way. So they're all there now. Admittedly, they're not the prettiest things in the world. But they're all routed the way the diagram says. So hopefully they all work the way they're supposed to. And yeah, now it's on to other things. And I still have a couple little details I need to clean up. Like there's supposed to be this is a vent, so there's supposed to be a little piece of foam on top of there. Someone before just had a vacuum line going to something else. Well, obviously that's not right. So I got to find a little piece of foam, little stuff like that. And then soon I can fire up the engine maybe. So today I got the fender on. It's not totally on. The back is good and tight. The front is not yet because it'll have to be adjusted when I put the header and the hood on and whatnot. But it's good to get something accomplished that actually looks like something, unlike all that California emissions. In case you haven't noticed, not a big fan of California emissions. So, anyway, there we go.